In 1968, psychologist Dr. Charles Tart conducted one of the most discussed laboratory experiments ever performed on an out-of-body experience. This wasn't a seance, it wasn't a staged demonstration, it was a controlled sleep laboratory study. And the subject was not a random volunteer. She was a young woman, identified only as Miss Z, who reported frequent, spontaneous out-of-body experiences since childhood. According to Tart's published account, she did not describe them as mystical visions or fantasy episodes. She described them as something structured, consistent, repeatable. So Tart decided to test a simple question. If consciousness can perceive from outside the body, can that perception retrieve information that the physical senses cannot access? Miss Z spent 4 consecutive nights in Tart's sleep laboratory. She was connected to EEG monitoring equipment, allowing Tart to track her brainwave patterns throughout the night, particularly REM sleep and wake transitions. Above her bed, positioned on a shelf roughly 6 feet high, an angle so it could not be seen from normal position, Tart placed a 5-digit random number. The number was changed and unknown to the subject. The target could only be read from a vantage point above the bed. No mirrors, no visible line of sight from the pillow, no prior knowledge of the digits. The protocol was straightforward. If she experienced an OBE, she would attempt to observe the number and report it upon waking. For the first 3 nights, no correct result. On the 4th night, Miss Z reported an out-of-body experience. She described rising near the ceiling, looking down, and seeing the number. When she gave the digits, they matched the target number correctly. Recorded, documented, published. That single data point is why this experiment still circulates decades later. This wasn't conducted by an occultist. Dr. Charles Tart was a respected psychologist associated with the emerging academic field of consciousness studies. He later held positions at institutions including UC Davis and became known for bridging psychology and altered states research. He published the experiment in the late 1960s in peer-reviewed literature, presenting it not as proof of metaphysics, but as an anomalous data worth examining. He acknowledged limitations, he documented procedures, he did not claim final answers, which, in some ways, strengthens the seriousness of the attempt. Over time, other researchers and skeptics examined the study. Some questioned whether the monitoring was sufficient to rule out subtle physical movement. Some noted that laboratory conditions in 1968 were not as tightly controlled as modern sleep labs. Some pointed out that the result was not replicated under stricter protocols. But none of those discussions erased what was recorded. They simply frame it within the normal scientific process. An observed anomaly, a proposed explanation, ongoing debate. Out-of-body experiences themselves are widely reported, across cultures, across centuries. They are described in near-death experiences, trauma events, meditation states, and spontaneous sleep episodes. Neurological research has shown that stimulating certain brain regions can induce OBE-like sensations. At the same time, experiencers often insist that what they perceive feels structured, coherent, and external, not dreamlike. The Miss Z experiment sits directly at that intersection between neurological interpretation and experiential testimony. What happened on that 4th night? Did Miss Z momentarily access information beyond normal sensory reach? Did some unnoticed physical factor allow perception? Was it coincidence? Or does it point to something about consciousness we do not yet fully understand? There is data, there is documentation, there is discussion, but there is no final agreement. And perhaps that is why this case remains part of serious consciousness research conversations more than 50 years later. Because it does not close the door, it simply leaves it slightly ajar.